Andrew, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here at IMpower. How has COVID impacted the regulatory aspects of the financial services industry?
Yeah, I think when COVID hit, it sort of threw everyone a bit of a tailspin because the speed at which obviously it hit, and then everyone went from working in office to being stuck at home. So the simplest aspects of being in an office, having recorded telephone lines, having secure printers, all of those things all of a sudden went out the window. So firms had to very quickly reassess, how do we do this? Not everyone's got their phones recorded at home, and we saw the regulators sort of struggle to understand how to affect it. So we saw a lot of things come out from regulators, sort of giving a bit of leeway. And I think now that we've got settled into this sort of remote working environment, firms are sort of reassessing constantly, how do we do things now? So does everything need to be recorded? Everyone's moved, I think it's fair to say, to a more digital online. You've got the secure data sites, etc., rather than piles of paper sitting at home. And I think the controls have had to change as well, when people are sitting with lots of inside information maybe, and they live with somebody else, they're not supposed to see that, etc. So it's this constant kind of, I think, tweaking of how things go. So
fascinating times for you, and a sort of rapid take-up in what was probably something that was coming in slowly in some of those institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of questions of, oh, we're fine with our personal account dealing because nobody does anything, and then everyone was sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, like, oh, I'll trade the stock market. So compliance officers were going insane. So how do I do that now? It's like, well, very, very carefully. So it's been a complete change. The best thing though, everyone's been using their BCP for about 2 years, so there's no need to test that on a regular basis. It's done every day, so it's settling down there.
So that was the COVID challenge, and obviously we're now in quite difficult times geopolitically. What considerations would you say firms need to now have in terms of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and what impact is that now having?
Yeah, I think with this, again, it's the speed of, I think, the way sanctions were implemented. We all knew, I think it's fair to say, that they were coming, but firms and managers, everybody's kind of been ahead of the game, where it's nobody wanted to touch sanctioned money, so you went out of your way up front to say, I'm not going to invest in a company, I'm not going to take on an investor. Now we're in a world where that investor, who may have been in the fund for umpteen years, is suddenly on a blacklist. So it's making sure, I think, that all of the sanctions checks, all the AML, KYC work is being done properly. So again, it's going back and reviewing what's in place, reviewing the different sanctions lists, because they all started being very different. So the UK would do one list, EU would do another, the US, they've all got slight deviations on who's going on the list, and the speed, so it was having to do it almost on a daily basis and make sure service providers were hitting the different sanctions lists as well. So sort of just adjusting things and looking at operations.
So with all the challenges you've described in both those answers, what do you see as the sort of regulatory trends that are now coming about, perhaps because of that landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a two-part. ESG is obviously the immediate thing. We're talking about that here. It seems like every panel. So it's looking to see how that pans out. But again, it's sort of deviation slightly, because everyone's looking at it slightly differently. I think being aware of the sort of different jurisdictions and those geopolitical impacts, and of course we've got inflation and cost of living issues as well.
It's not one size fits all. Companies need to realise it's got to be customised to their needs.
It really does now. It's a case of, assessing what the firm does, what they're going to do in the short term, working with legal, risk, compliance, to make sure that you're on top of things and there's nothing.
How do you suggest firms do prepare now? What would be your key kind of suggestion if people were to talk to you about what those preparations should look like?
As difficult as it is to do in today's world, it's try and plan out a handful of years in advance. So I think even though everybody's talking about the same things, they're talking about them in vastly different ways. So to use ESG, Europe is doing sustainability, UK is doing climate, the US are picking up on things. We've got diversity and inclusion coming in different forms, all of which are equally important. So I think for managers, it's understanding the direction they're going to go, work with compliance, risk, etc. And as you said, know the specifics. So if you're going into a certain jurisdiction, work with people in that jurisdiction or have knowledge of that jurisdiction to help with whatever challenges they come across. So it's picking the right sort of jungle guide to a certain extent, so making sure that it works.
Andrew, thank you for offering your words of wisdom. Great to have you here at IMpower. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thanks very much. It was great.